A little more?
I argue that the derivatives are the cause of the current depression and breakdown crisis. It's an interesting point, right? To ask the average person, why should there be a depression? What is causing the depression? You get maybe no answer at all, or something crazy. The big difference between the world economy, say in 1982, the Latin American debt crisis, or 1998 even, when you had the Asian contagion and long-term capital management blew up. The difference now is that we have a derivatives bubble which amounts, according to my estimate, to $1.5 quadrillion of derivatives in notional value. That means $1,500 trillion of derivatives worldwide, with maybe two-thirds of that in the United States, or between the United States and Great Britain. And these are paper based on paper. They're an extra level of exotic and toxic investment paper. They are the credit default swaps, the collateralized debt obligations, the structured investment vehicles, the asset-backed securities. So that's all some kind of security built on top of some other kind of paper security. And this poses the problem. If you have 1.5 quadrillion of derivatives, what can you do about that? And the answer is virtually nothing. It is a black hole.
What do we do now? How does this problem get fixed? And is the U.S. on the right track to getting out?
First of all, the U.S. is on the very, very wrong track. And we're only about a year, actually less than a year, into the really bad phase of the crisis. If you go back to the 1930s, you'll see that the fall to the bottom of the Depression took about 4 years. So I think we've got big events ahead of us. We've got, first of all, some kind of a dollar crisis is definitely in the cards, because Obama's putting out $13 trillion for the banks at the same time that Detroit and the auto industry is being destroyed, basically, and all kinds of productive activity is shrinking. So it looks like we're headed towards something like dollar hyperinflation. It may be even worse than hyperinflation. So we may be getting into, huge devaluations of the dollar, and that would then lead to probably to some kind of final crisis of the U.S. and British banking system. The dollar overhang is a big problem. $4 trillion out there in the world. I think what people ought to think about doing with those dollars is buy something with them. In other words, use them for something worthwhile. It would be very desirable to have some kind of a cooperative effort that would involve repatriating those dollars, not by dumping them, but by buying things. In other words, let the U.S. produce something for export that somebody wants to buy. And I think with that, you could maybe produce your way out of the crisis. And that really is the only way.
You've also said that the way Obama is directing this is that American people are going to have to sacrifice a lot. Right. Do you think that they're ready to sacrifice?
I think the idea of sacrifice is simply monstrous. If we start with a depleted, exhausted population here, with the living standard having declined by about two-thirds over the last 40 years, one of the things people notice about the U.S. is that the hours of work are far more than, say, in Europe. If you want to impose more austerity and sacrifice and cuts on that population, I think that's absolutely irresponsible.
So now, if everything that you say is true, if Obama is a puppet, if it's this new liberal imperialism that you say is worse than the neocons, what will the future bring? What can we expect?
I think what we can expect here in the United States is a continuous deterioration of the economic situation for several years to come, and it can become extremely dramatic and extremely urgent to find a way out. The Republican Party has shown its bankruptcy with Bush. They continue to show their bankruptcy with these idiotic slogans about free markets and individual responsibility. What good does it do to talk about individual responsibility when the world is being crushed under 1.5 quadrillion of toxic derivatives? That makes no sense at all. I would hope that somebody in the Democratic Party is calculating right now that Obama is on his way to cratering. He's already begun to fall. He's lost 5% approval just in the last 2 months. So I think he has peaked and he's now on the downward track. If we could get a left-wing or New Deal challenge against Obama coming out of the Democratic Party, that, I think, would at least give us the basis for something more constructive than we have now. But we've got the rest of this year, I think, is going to be very, very ugly and very difficult in this country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.